Greetings, St. Luke's on the Lake. This is Father Justin, your rector, and I want to just take a moment and give you an update on worship, in-person worship, online worship, some of the things that have been happening. We haven't talked about the effects of COVID-19 and what we're doing since it's been a few months since you've last heard from me. And I told you then that there would be some changes as we learn more, as science kicks in, and sure enough, there is. But before I get to all that, I want to just give thanks for each and every one of you for your commitment to St. Luke's, for your love, your concern, your care, your perseverance, your faithfulness. It's an incredible feeling being a rector of just over a year here to have such support for the mission and ministry of St. Luke's. I would just ask you to pause for a moment and remember what we've done over the last several months to affect so many people here locally and abroad. And that is a great gift, and that is all thanks to you. And I am truly grateful for that, for the mission and ministry that God has called us to, and for your commitment to that. Now, by way of talking about worship and where we're at this particular point in this pandemic, I want to start with a little piece of scripture from Romans chapter 12, where Paul tells us in verse 12, so chapter 12, verse 12, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer, share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. To me, that sums up everything we've done to this point. I said at the beginning of this pandemic, I tried to be very clear in a very uncertain world. I tried to provide a great deal of clarity to you that we were going to put safety and health first, that we were not going to fall into any kind of political discourse about COVID-19, that as your rector, in consultation with my bishop, who I remain as part of my ordination vows obedient to, which is true for all clergy in the Episcopal Church, that I was going to follow the best science and play it very safe for your health and well-being, but also for my family's health and well-being, being the parent of a new child and having another younger child, and my wife. And it's important that we all keep that in mind. So, as we move through this pandemic, we've transitioned from online only back to in-person. We tried 2 services for a moment, but the numbers aren't there yet, and that's fine. And we're going to continue pushing the 9 o'clock, and when we see that service grow, then we will add probably an 11:15 as volunteers allow us. So let me pause and just say that very clearly. In order for in-person worship to be successful at St. Luke's on the Lake, we don't need just a willingness to come and participate. We need to make sure that our volunteer pool is deep enough to support that work. Or in the event of a COVID positive test, per our procedures and our reopening plan, all those volunteers at that service where someone tests positive have to monitor their symptoms for 14 days. Albeit, I feel that what we're doing protects our volunteers and protects our worshipers, and that the spread of COVID-19 would be very minimal, but we still will honor what we said we're going to do and follow the best science, clergy included, and sit on the sidelines for 14 days, worship online, monitor our symptoms, and do what's necessary for our own health and well-being. So if our volunteer pool is too shallow, then one of those events could disrupt service over several weeks because we don't have the volunteers to engage in in-person worship. So I want to keep that in mind. If you are interested in in-person worship, please let us know. Call the church office. We would love to hear from you and to get you trained and plugged in. We need people who we're starting to add in some greeters, check-in folks, and ushers, and there's training for all of that. So do let us know. Now, a bit about worship, about the liturgy. I know many of you, and I appreciate that, have asked questions about different things in the liturgy since we've been online all the way through to in person. There are new guidelines out that we've been adhering to, or we're going to start to adhere to. One is you will see me not wearing a mask for the liturgy of the word, the first half of the liturgy, where we have the readings, the sermon, all that before we get to communion. And the reason being is we have the gift of space, and science has now told us that I can keep enough distance from you all that I can now take my mask off, which will allow you to see me and to hear me better, and I think that'll be a good thing. Now, some of the things that haven't changed that we've been doing since we joined online, and that is the length of the service. When we were online only, the length mattered because of attention span. It's hard to stay tuned into a worship service for more than 35 to 45 minutes. I could bore you to tears with analytics that prove that point, not just here at St. Luke's, but at many different churches and non-churches that do online video streaming as analytics. It's just the nature of who we are as people. It's hard to stare at a screen faithfully for a long period of time. So I had to adapt the liturgy. I'm not perfect, and I had to make decisions based on what I thought would be most valuable to our liturgy. And I chose to keep communion for most of our time online, and I've chosen communion as our in-person option. I have adapted that liturgy. We have cut it down to 2 lessons, one of either the Old or New Testament, and lately it's been the New Testament, and the Gospel. We have removed the Psalm. I've also removed the Nicene Creed. And I know these things have been hard at times for some to engage in. The reason I'm doing this is not because I don't like the Nicene Creed or I don't like the Psalm. It's because, one, our prayer book allows me to do that. Our prayer book's actually a lot more flexible than we have led you to believe over the last 30 or 40 years of this prayer book. And I think we have to think about these things. So all that to say is, over the coming weeks and months, as we continue on this journey, I'll be playing with the liturgy and adding different things in. I might remove other pieces of the liturgy. Again, trying to respect that time limit that the bishop has asked me in the guidelines to adhere to. And that guideline is reinforced by not just the CDC, but many epidemiologists who are leading the effort to try to help us create ways to come together faithfully and safely, who tell us that even being masked in an indoor space for more than 35, 45 minutes becomes more of a risk even when you're masked, even practicing social distancing. Again, so we're going to keep that in mind. Again, safety is the most important thing, and I've said that from the get-go, and until we come out the other side, that will be one of my guiding principles. I want to be with all of you on the other side, and I hope that you'll want to be with me on the other side of this pandemic, so we must do this. None of us know how this virus will affect us unless we get infected, and I don't wish that upon anybody to have to experience that. We have had people here at St. Luke's who have had family members and St. Luke's members who have been dramatically affected by this virus, so I do not take it lightly. Safety is important. Now, the last thing I want to say is the changes that you see now aren't changes that after we move through this pandemic that are going to necessarily continue. I would encourage you, though, in the words of Paul to the Romans, and thinking about Proverbs, at different points in the book of Proverbs, God reminds us that there's opportunities in moments like this. Instead of thinking about what we're losing, I'm hoping we'll seize this moment and embrace what we can do. What are the best parts of our liturgical life? Why do we come together? What does our prayer book allow for? These are conversations I hope we can have now and that we can continue to have long after this pandemic. You know, we always joke in the Episcopal Church that we are famous for saying we've always done it that way. I am hoping that with COVID-19 that goes away and that we truly walk into our liturgy to experience something special, not just here at St. Luke's, which I think happens, but at churches across the world, that we'll rethink and reimagine our liturgical life and see what that looks like. So, I don't say that again to scare you and say all these changes are going to stay. They're not. We're going to have conversations, though, especially when we see the end in sight, about what our worship life needs to look like. What does their prayer book allow us to do? What are exciting takeaways? What are doors that are opening for us right now? What is COVID-19 allowing us to do versus what is it taking away from us? Because it's taking a lot. It's taken a lot of lives. It's messed up a lot of livelihoods. But yet, in the midst of all of this, the incarnation of Jesus Christ among us, with us, through us, God is very much present, and God is moving, calling out to us, and St. Luke's has faithfully answered that call. So I hope we'll continue to do that in the most innovative, faithful ways that we can. So I encourage you to really enter into our life together over the next months while we continue this journey, and be open-minded about what we can do here and what worship looks like. So know that in the coming next Sunday, you will not see me in a mass for half of the liturgy, that I'll be playing with the liturgy and trying to add things in like the Nicene Creed, but honor time and the guidelines that are set out before me as I remain obedient to my bishop and the expectations they have for us as it relates to worship. But I am constantly evolving and working towards doing the most creative liturgy I can do with the resources we have. And my last teaser for you is that Don Grantham is working on the new guidelines related to singing. So I hope to have some information for you in the next weeks or months as more studies come out, and maybe we'll have some exciting news to share with you soon enough about singing in the church services. Thank you for who you are, what you do, and your faithfulness to St. Luke's. And I will see you online or in person at one of these upcoming Sundays soon.